Last month, a mother named Priya sat across from a speech therapist in a small clinic room. Her 2-year-old son, Elijah, sat on the floor between them, stacking coloured wooden blocks into a perfect tower. He had not said a single word. Not one, not mama, not dada, not juice, not no, not mine. 24 months old, and the boy had never once opened his mouth and produced a recognizable word in any language his parents spoke at home. Priya had done everything the books told her to do. She read to him every night. She narrated her cooking. She pointed at dogs in the park and said the word dog slowly and clearly. Nothing came back. And here's where the story splits into two directions. One direction is panic. The other is something most parents are never told about. This video follows the second direction, because that is where the science actually leads. I'm Dr. Nana. Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through 5 hidden reasons a 2-year-old stays silent, 4 mistakes parents make that accidentally keep their child quiet, and 3 signs that the silence is not a problem at all. Before we go any further, an important note. This video is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not replace advice from a qualified speech therapist, paediatrician, or child psychologist. If you have concerns about your child, please consult a professional. Now back to Elijah. The speech therapist asked Priya a question that changed everything. She did not ask what words Elijah could say. She asked what Elijah did when Priya was not looking at him. Priya thought about it, she said. He sorted things. He would take a bag of mixed crayons and separate them by colour without being asked. He stacked blocks by size. He noticed when a picture frame was crooked, and he walked over and straightened it. He memorized the route to his grandmother's house, and if his father took a different turn, Elijah would point and grunt in the correct direction. He hummed melodies from songs he had only heard once or twice before. The therapist nodded and said something that made Priya cry. She said, "Your son is not failing to talk. His brain is busy doing something else first. And until you understand what that something else is, you will keep treating silence like a disease." This is the moment most parents never reach. The moment when someone tells them that silence at 2 does not automatically mean something is broken. It might mean something is building, and the difference between those 2 things shapes everything that comes next. Let us start with what is actually happening inside the brain of a 2-year-old who understands everything but says nothing. Because this is where the first mistake begins, and where most parents accidentally make the problem worse. Between birth and age 3, a child's brain forms over 1 million new neural connections every single second. That is not a metaphor. 1 million connections per second. The brain is building roads faster than any city in history. But here's what most parents do not know. Not every brain builds the same roads first. Some brains prioritize the language highway. Those children talk early, sometimes before 12 months. Other brains prioritize something completely different. Research from brain imaging studies has found that many late-talking children who are otherwise developing normally process information through the right hemisphere of their brain instead of the more typical left hemisphere. The left side handles language. The right side handles something else entirely. The right hemisphere handles spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, musical processing, analytical thinking. It is the side of the brain that sees a pile of blocks and immediately understands which order they should go in without being told. So when Elijah sorts crayons by colour and straightens picture frames and memorizes driving routes at 2 years old, his brain is not ignoring language. It is running a different program first. His silence is not empty. It is occupied. Researchers have noticed that many of these children share a cluster of traits that keep appearing across studies. They tend to excel in what clinicians call the 3 M's: music, mathematics, and memory. They often hum before they speak. They often have close relatives who work in analytical fields: engineering, accounting, music, computer science. And they are frequently the children who are late to potty train as well, because even that milestone follows a different internal schedule. This pattern has a name. It is called Einstein syndrome. And before you dismiss that as parents making excuses for a delay, consider this. Albert Einstein did not speak in full sentences until he was 5 years old. Physicist Richard Feynman was a late talker. Pianist Arthur Rubinstein was a late talker. Nobel Prize-winning economist Gary Becker was a late talker. The pattern is real, well documented, and far more common than most paediatricians acknowledge in a 10-minute appointment. But here's where things get complicated, and this is the part most parents need to hear before they relax too much. Because not every silent 2-year-old has Einstein syndrome. Some of them have something else happening entirely, and the earlier you catch it, the better the outcome. So how do you tell the difference? How does a parent sitting in a kitchen watching a quiet toddler know whether the silence is a brain that is busy building something extraordinary, or a brain that is genuinely struggling and needs immediate help? The answer is not in the silence itself. It is in what surrounds the silence. And that is what most parents and honestly most online advice articles completely miss. Stay with me, because this next part changes how you look at your child tonight. There are 2 types of silence in a 2-year-old. The first type is called expressive language delay. This means the child understands language perfectly well. They follow instructions, they point at what they want, they respond to their name, they make eye contact, they just do not produce words yet. 10 to 20% of children under 3 fall into this category. That is roughly 1 in every 5 to 10 toddlers. It is not rare, it is not unusual. And the majority of these children catch up on their own by age 3 or 4 without any intervention at all. The second type of silence is different. This is when a child does not seem to understand language either. They do not respond to their name consistently. They do not follow simple instructions like, "Give me the cup." They do not point at things to share interest with you. If your child falls into this second category, then the silence is telling you something more urgent and you should not wait. You should book a hearing test first, because hearing loss is one of the most common and most overlooked causes of speech delay in toddlers. 3 in every 1,000 children are born with some form of hearing loss. Some of them pass the newborn hearing screen and develop hearing issues later from ear infections, fluid buildup, or conditions that were not present at birth. If a child cannot hear the sounds around them clearly, they cannot reproduce them. After hearing is ruled out, the next step is a developmental assessment. Not because something is definitely wrong, but because the earlier support begins, the better the outcomes are across every single study ever published on this topic. Early intervention is the one thing every researcher agrees on. But let us go back to the first group, the majority. The children like Elijah who understand everything, engage with the world, make eye contact, follow instructions, show affection, play imaginatively, and simply do not talk yet. What about them? This is where the mirror turns around, because in many of these cases the biggest factor influencing when a child starts talking is not inside the child at all. It is in the environment the child lives in, and specifically it is in the behavior of the adults around them. A study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association found something that should have made every parent in the world sit up straight. They discovered that screen time in 1-year-olds was associated with developmental delays in communication at ages 2 through 4. But it was not the screen itself that caused the delay. It was what the screen replaced. Every hour a toddler spent watching a screen corresponded with measurable reductions in 3 specific things: child vocalizations, conversational turns, and total adult words spoken in the room. Read that again. It was not the screen that silenced the child. It was the fact that while the screen was on, nobody was talking to the child. And the child was not being given any reason to talk back. The screen created a communication vacuum, and the child sat inside it. This is the reveal that most parents are not prepared for. because it means that in many households, the child is not refusing to talk. The child has simply never been given enough of the one thing that actually triggers speech, and that thing is not words. It is turns. Researchers at MIT conducted a study that changed the entire field of language development. They put recording devices on children aged 4 to 6 and tracked every word spoken to them, every word they spoke, and every time a parent and child went back and forth in conversation. They called those back and forth exchanges conversational turns. A parent says something, the child responds, the parent responds back. That is one turn. And what they found when they put those children inside brain scanners was extraordinary. The number of conversational turns a child experienced predicted differences in their actual brain structure. Not just their vocabulary, not just their grammar, their physical brain. The white matter tracts connecting Broca's area, where speech is produced, were stronger in children who had more conversational turns, and here's the part that matters most. It was not the total number of words a child heard that made the difference. A parent could read an entire encyclopedia out loud to a toddler, and it would not have the same effect as 5 minutes of genuine back-and-forth conversation. If you are watching this and thinking about your own home right now, if you're thinking about how many times today you actually paused and waited for your child to respond, even with a babble, even with a grunt, even with a sound that was not a word, then you are already starting to see the mirror, because this is the reverse mirror that this whole video is built around. The silence in your child may not be about your child at all. It may be a reflection of the communication pattern in your home, not because you are a bad parent, but because nobody ever explained this to you. Let me be extremely clear about something. This is not about blame. This is about information. The parents who are watching this video are the parents who care enough to type a question into a search bar at midnight because their child is not talking. You are not the problem. The gap in your information was the problem. So now let us close that gap. Let us talk about what actually works. Not theories, not guesses, but the specific things that peer-reviewed research has shown will increase the chance of a quiet 2-year-old starting to talk. And the first one is the one parents get wrong most often. Most parents of late talkers respond to their child's silence by talking more. They narrate everything. They label every object. They flood the child with language, hoping that sheer volume will eventually break through. They talk at the child instead of with the child. But language is not a download. You cannot pour it into a toddler like water into a cup. Language is a social behavior. It develops through interaction, not exposure. A child does not learn to talk by hearing words. A child learns to talk by needing to use them. This is why the serve and return model is now the gold standard in every speech therapy clinic in the world. The child does something that is the serve. A grunt, a point, a look, a reach, a sound. And the parent responds meaningfully within 2 to 5 seconds. That is the return. The child grunts and points at a banana. The parent says, "Banana." Do you want the banana? Instead of just handing it over silently. The child babbles something that sounds like bar. The parent says, "Yes, ball. You see the ball." The parent treats every sound like a word and every gesture like a sentence. But here is the part most parents skip after the return. You have to pause. You have to create a gap. A space where the child could respond if they wanted to. Most parents fill that gap immediately. They answer their own question. They move on. They close the window before the child can climb through it. That pause is where language is born. In the silence between the parent's words and the child's next move. If you never leave that gap, you are telling your child's brain that communication is a one-way street. And one-way streets do not need 2 speakers. The second mistake parents make is anticipating too well. This sounds counterintuitive because anticipating your child's needs feels like good parenting, and in many ways it is. But when a child never has to communicate what they want, because a parent already knows, speech becomes optional. If Elijah points at the fridge and Priya immediately opens it, finds the yogurt, opens the lid, and hands him a spoon, Elijah's brain registers that the point was enough. Why develop a word when a finger does the job? The system works. Why upgrade it? This does not mean you should ignore your child's needs or make them frustrated. It means you should slow the process down. Elijah points at the fridge. Priya says, "What do you want?" She pauses. She waits. She opens the fridge and holds up two options. She says yogurt or banana. She waits again. That wait is the invitation. That wait is the brain receiving the message that communication requires participation. And even if Elijah does not say yogurt today, his brain is storing that moment. It is building the circuit that will eventually produce the word. Every pause builds the road. The third mistake is one that nobody wants to talk about because it involves the device that is currently within 3 feet of almost every parent reading this. And I do not say this to shame you. I say it because the data is now too strong to ignore. A study published in JAMA Pediatrics tracked children from 12 to 36 months and measured screen time alongside parent-child talk. The results showed a consistent negative association. More screen time meant fewer adult words spoken, fewer child vocalizations, and fewer conversational turns. But here's the part that matters. It was not just the child's screen time that predicted delays. In the language delay group, the parents themselves spent significantly more time on their own screens. The parents' phone use reduced the number of interactions they had with their child, even when they were in the same room. I want you to think about this for a moment. Your child is sitting on the floor. You are sitting on the sofa. You are both in the same room. But you are scrolling through your phone. Your child makes a sound. You do not respond because you did not hear it. That missed serve just became a missed connection in your child's brain. Now multiply that by 300 times a day. Because research using recording devices worn by children found that the average toddler makes hundreds of vocalizations per day. Each one is a serve. Each one is an invitation to build a conversational turn, and each one that goes unreturned is a circuit that does not complete. Again, this is not about guilt. You are already here watching a 20-minute video about your child's development. That is not the behavior of a negligent parent. But knowing this information gives you something you did not have before. It gives you a lever, a specific thing you can change tonight. Put the phone in another room during meals. Put it face down during play. Set a timer for 15 minutes, and during that time respond to every single sound your child makes as though it is the most important word in the English language. Because to their brain it is. The fourth mistake is the quiet house. And this one surprises parents because they associate quiet with calm and calm with good parenting. But a child's brain does not learn language in silence. It learns language in noise, specifically in the noise of human conversation happening around them. Children who grow up in homes where adults talk to each other frequently, where there is dinner table conversation, where phone calls happen out loud, where siblings argue and laugh and negotiate. Those children hear thousands more conversational models per day than children in quiet homes. This does not mean you should create chaos. It means you should narrate your life out loud even when it feels silly. Talk to your child while you cook. Describe what you see out the window. Tell them what you are thinking about while you fold laundry. Let them hear the rhythm of language in a living context. Because language is not just vocabulary, it is melody, it is timing. It is the rise and fall of a voice that tells a listener whether something is a question or a statement, and toddlers absorb that melody months before they absorb the words themselves. If you are watching this and realizing that some of these patterns exist in your home right now, I want you to subscribe to this channel. Not because I need the number, but because every video I make is designed to decode the hidden messages behind your child's behavior. The ones most parents never learn to read until the pattern is already set. Now, let us talk about the fifth reason a 2-year-old stays silent. And this one is the one that will change how you see your child completely. because it has nothing to do with screens or conversational turns or household noise. It has to do with temperament. Some children are cautious speakers. They will not say a word until they are absolutely sure they can say it correctly. They are not delayed. They are perfectionists. And perfectionism at 2 years old looks exactly like silence. You see this in children who suddenly start speaking in full sentences at age 2.5 or 3, as though a switch was flipped overnight. Their parents say it was like one day nothing, and the next day paragraphs. But it was not overnight. It was months of silent rehearsal finally reaching the threshold of confidence. These children were listening. They were processing. They were storing. And they were waiting until the internal model of language was complete enough that they felt safe producing it out loud. Their silence was not absence. It was preparation. And this brings us to the most important question in this entire video. How do you know which category your child falls into? How do you know if your 2-year-old is a late bloomer, an analytical brain running a different program, or a child who genuinely needs professional support right now? Here is the checklist that every speech therapist uses. And I want you to go through it honestly, not with hope, not with fear, with information. Because the answer to this question determines what you should do next and how urgently you should do it. Does your child respond to their name? Not every time, but most of the time. When you call Elijah from across the room, does he look up, turn his head, or acknowledge that he heard you? If yes, that is a strong sign that receptive language is developing normally. Does your child point at things to share interest with you? Not just to get something they want, but to show you something. A bird outside, a picture in a book, a dog walking past. If your child points to share and not just to request, that is called joint attention, and it is one of the strongest predictors of language development. Does your child follow simple instructions? Give me the ball. Put the shoe by the door. Go get your cup. If your child can follow 1- and 2-step instructions without you pointing or gesturing, then their comprehension is working, even if their production is not. Does your child engage in pretend play? Feeding a toy, putting a doll to sleep, stirring an empty pot with a spoon. Pretend play requires symbolic thinking, the ability to let one thing represent another. A spoon becomes a magic wand. A box becomes a car. That same symbolic thinking is the foundation of language where a sound represents an object. Does your child make eye contact during interactions? Not constantly, but naturally. Do they look at your face when you're talking to them? When they want something? When something surprises them? Eye contact during communication is a social behavior that indicates the child understands that language happens between people. If you answered yes to most of those questions, then your child is very likely a late talker whose brain is on a different schedule, not a broken schedule, a different one. And the research says that the vast majority of these children catch up by 3 or 4 years old. If you answered no to several of those questions, then please do not wait. Book a hearing test this week. Request a developmental assessment. Contact your local early intervention program. Not because something is definitely wrong, but because early support produces dramatically better outcomes than waiting. The single thing that every study published in the last 20 years agrees on is that early intervention works. Whether the cause is hearing loss or autism, or a developmental language disorder or something else entirely, the children who receive support before age 3 consistently do better than those who wait. And I want to address something directly to the parents who are watching this with a knot in their stomach. The ones who suspect something might be more than just a late talker but who are afraid to say it out loud because saying it makes it real. Getting an assessment is not a diagnosis, it is information. And information is not a sentence. It is a map. You would not drive across a country without a map because you were afraid of what the map might show. You would use the map so you could take the best possible route. An assessment tells you where your child is right now. It tells you what their strengths are. It tells you what support would help. And in many cases, it tells you that your child is developing normally and that the silence is exactly what I described earlier, a brain that is busy building something else first. Either way, you walk out of that room with more than you walked in with. You walk out with a direction, and direction is the opposite of panic. Direction is what replaces that midnight search bar spiral that brought you to this video in the first place. Now, let me give you something practical. 3 things you can start doing tonight that will increase conversational turns in your home and create the conditions your child's brain needs to start producing language when it is ready. Number 1 is called sportscasting. You narrate what your child is doing as they do it, not what you want them to do, what they are already doing. Elijah is stacking the red block. Now Elijah is picking up the blue block. Elijah is putting the blue block on top. This works because you are matching language to the child's current focus of attention. Their brain is already engaged with the blocks. When your words arrive at the same moment, their attention is locked on the same object. The connection between the word and the object becomes concrete. Number 2 is called the one-up rule. If your child uses 0 words, you use 1 word. If your child uses 1 word, you use 2 words. You stay exactly 1 step ahead of them linguistically. Not 5 steps. Not a full sentence when they give you a grunt. 1 step. Elijah grunts and points at a ball. You say ball. Not do you want to play with the big red ball over there on the shelf, because that is 5 steps ahead and the brain cannot map a 12-word sentence to a single grunt. Ball, 1 word. Matching the child's level +1. Number 3 is the most powerful and the most difficult. You have to tolerate the uncomfortable silence after you speak. You have to resist the urge to fill the gap. You say ball, and then you wait, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, you look at your child expectantly, you raise your eyebrows slightly. Your body language is saying your turn now, and your child's brain is receiving that message even if their mouth is not ready to respond yet. That expectant pause trains the brain that communication is reciprocal. It takes 2 people, and eventually when the circuits are ready, the child will fill that gap. I want to tell you what happened to Elijah, not because his story will be your child's story. Every child is different, but because his story illustrates the principle that this entire video is built around. After that appointment, Priya changed 3 things. She put her phone in the bedroom during meals and playtime. She started sportscasting Elijah's activities out loud, and she stopped anticipating his needs before he had a chance to communicate them. For 2 weeks, nothing changed. Elijah still pointed, still grunted, still hummed. Priya felt like it was not working. She almost went back to her old patterns because at least those patterns were comfortable even if they were not helping. In the 3rd week, Elijah was sitting in his high chair and Priya held up a banana in one hand and a biscuit in the other. She said banana or biscuit, and she waited. Elijah looked at both. He looked at Priya. He opened his mouth and said bar. It was not banana, it was bar, 1 syllable. The first intentional sound Elijah had ever used to communicate a specific want. Priya cried. The speech therapist said that bar was the most important word Elijah had ever produced because it was not just a sound, it was a choice. Within 4 weeks, Elijah had 7 words. Within 3 months, he had over 50. By his 3rd birthday, he was forming 2-word combinations. By 3.5, he was speaking in full sentences, asking questions, and telling his grandmother about his day on the phone. His brain had been ready the whole time. It had been building roads, sorting information, processing patterns, running the analytical program that would later make him the child who could do 50-piece puzzles at age 4. The silence was never empty. It was full. But here's the part of the story that Priya would want me to tell you. She said the hardest thing she had to do was not teach Elijah to talk. The hardest thing was accepting that the way she had been communicating was part of the reason he had not needed to. Not because she was wrong, because she was efficient. She anticipated every need. She answered every question before it was asked. She created a world so perfectly responsive that speech became unnecessary. Her love was so thorough it accidentally removed the invitation. That is the reverse mirror. The silence in the child reflected the communication pattern in the home, and when the pattern changed, the silence changed with it, not instantly, not magically, but measurably and consistently over the course of a few months. Now I want to address the parents whose children are not like Elijah. The parents whose children did not respond to their name, did not point to share, did not follow instructions, did not make eye contact naturally. Those parents need a different message, and it is this: you are not too late. Whatever your child's age right now, you are not too late. The brain's ability to form new connections does not end at 2 or 3 or 5. It continues throughout childhood. Early is better, but today is earlier than tomorrow, and tomorrow is earlier than next month. If you suspect hearing loss, get the test. If you suspect autism, get the assessment. If you suspect a developmental language disorder, ask for a referral. Every week you spend wondering is a week your child could have been receiving support. And support is not a label. Support is a bridge. I have seen children who did not say a word at 3 and were reading chapter books at 7 because their parents got them the right support at the right time. The outcome is not written at age 2. The outcome is shaped by what happens next, and what happens next is in your hands right now. So here's what I want you to take away from the last 20 minutes. Silence at 2 is not a verdict. It is a question. And the answer to that question depends on what surrounds the silence, not the silence itself. Check the receptive language, check the joint attention, check the pretend play, check the eye contact, check the hearing, and then check the environment. Check the conversational turns, check the screen time, check the pauses, check whether your child has a reason to talk. Because in many homes across the world right now, there is a perfectly healthy 2-year-old whose brain is ready, whose comprehension is strong, whose analytical mind is firing on all cylinders, and who is sitting in silence because nobody has left them a gap to fill. Fill that gap tonight. Put the phone down. Hold up 2 choices, say the words, and wait. Wait longer than you think is reasonable. Wait until the silence feels uncomfortable, because somewhere inside that silence your child's brain is building the circuit that will produce their first word. And when that word comes, and it will come, you will understand what every speech therapist already knows, that the silence was never the enemy. The silence was the preparation. And the child who made you wait the longest might just be the one who had the most to say. Before I go, I want to share something the speech therapist told Priya on their last visit. She said, "Parents spend so much time worrying about when their child will talk that they forget to notice everything their child is already saying without words. Every point is a sentence. Every grunt is a word. Every sorted crayon is a paragraph about how their brain sees the world. Your child has been communicating with you since the day they were born. They have just been using a language you were never taught to hear. Learn to hear it, respond to it, and then leave the gap. The words will come. They always do. And when they do, you will not remember the silence. You will only remember the moment the silence broke, and everything your child had been saving up came rushing out. One final reminder. This video is for educational purposes only. If your child is not meeting speech milestones, please consult a qualified speech-language pathologist or paediatrician. Early assessment is always better than waiting, and an assessment is information, not a diagnosis. This is what I do on this channel. Every video is built to decode the hidden messages behind your child's behavior. The ones most parents never learn to read until the pattern is already set. If you want to understand what your child is really telling you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a translation. I am Dr. Nana. Thank you for spending the last 20 minutes with me. Leave a comment below and tell me what age your child started talking. Was it early on time or late? And if they were a late talker, What was the first word they finally said?